On August 16, 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald was in New Orleans handing out Fair Play for Cuba Committee leaflets, and he had with him, allegedly, a man named Charles Hall Steele Jr., and that's Steele, I keep calling him Hall. In the background there, Oswald is looking at him. That's the person identified as Steele. It's the only person who could possibly be Steele in these films, because the other person helping Oswald is obviously a Latin-looking sort of person, and is not the person identified as Steele. So this is the fellow I'm talking about here, the man identified as Charles Hall Steele Jr. And this is the earliest reference to Charles Hall Steele Jr. we have on the record. It's an FBI document, November 25th, 1963, 3 days after the assassination, the day after Oswald was killed. Charles Hall Steele Sr., 1488 Madrid Street, New Orleans, advised he is employed as Deputy Civil Sheriff for Orleans Parish, is a major in the 39th Division of the Louisiana National Guard, and is presently a candidate for the Democratic State Central Committee in the forthcoming election. This is that guy's father. He advised that on the night of November 23, 1963, he observed a broadcast on television station WWL-TV at about 10:20 p.m. in which a film strip was shown of Lee Harvey Oswald distributing some literature. He stated the announcer said that the FBI was interested in identifying a person distributing literature with Oswald, and Mr. Steele recognized this person as being his son, Charles Hall Steele Jr. He stated he had therefore called the FBI and made arrangements to bring his son to the office on the morning of November 24th, 1963. And when Steele Jr. talked to the FBI, he told them that he had gone to the employment office in New Orleans there because he had brought his girlfriend there because she was taking some typing test. And that Oswald, out of the blue, just walked up to him and offered him $2 to help hand out some leaflets. And that he did that. And that when he was handing them out, he realized they were communist propaganda. And so he stopped handing it out, he said. And then when he found out that he had been filmed and that his film of him was shown on TV, that he got concerned and he contacted the FBI. And in the FBI document here, it says Steele informed that Charlene Stoof, his girlfriend, told him she observed motion pictures of Steele on television during the evening of August 16, 1963, assisting Oswald in handing out leaflets. As a result, he anonymously contacted the New Orleans office of the FBI by telephone for assistance in having the motion pictures removed from the television station. He said he was informed that the FBI had no control over the news media, and as a result, he contacted the television station requesting that the motion pictures not be shown. There is no document from before the assassination that confirms this, and the FBI itself doesn't confirm it here. They're just saying that this is what Steele told them here. So, even though he says he contacted the FBI prior to the assassination, we have no other evidence to support that. We do have documents from the FBI which refer to Steele as a confidential informant Dallas T-14. This may simply refer to his November 25th statement that I just read from. Some people think it means more than that. I'm not sure. But I think it should be mentioned. And Albert Jenner, a Warren Commission attorney, interviewed Steele for the Warren Commission. And this is a comment he made in an internal document, a summary of that interview. This was not published in the Warren Commission volumes. But here he says, "This witness was not very bright. He was extremely naive and somewhat slow-witted. His father, Charles Steele Sr., brought him to the courthouse. His father at first wanted to stay in the room while young Steele's deposition was being taken, but Jenner refused to permit it. Young Steele was obviously under the complete dominance and influence of his father. It is Jenner's distinct impression that young Steele's involvement in the passing out of the FPCC leaflets very likely occurred just about as young Steele relates it, strange as it may seem. Now, I think the issue of his father is potentially important here. He's a deputy in New Orleans and a politician, and he is apparently controlling the witness. He's dominating the witness, according to Jenner. So that might be an important consideration. Now, when Steele talked to the HSCA in 1978, according to the HSCA report here, subject refused to answer questions concerning his knowledge of Lee Harvey Oswald prior to passing out leaflets on Canal Street, and also the subject refuses to answer when asked if he saw Lee Harvey Oswald again. It seems to me that if you refuse to answer a question like that, then that means the answer is yes and you don't want to talk about it. I don't see why he would answer other questions but not answer those questions if the answer was no. Now, he had said prior and implied, back in 1963 and 4, that he had not met Oswald prior to that, or I don't know if he was asked about meeting him afterwards, but it was like the first time he had seen him at the employment office. So here, I don't see why he doesn't just say the same thing here. I don't see why he would refuse to answer the question. What I find most interesting is that we have another identification of this person with Oswald. A December 10th, 1963 document. Crossed out on there, it says Commission Exhibit 1413. Deputy Leonard Spears, East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office, advised December 5th, 1963, that sometime within the 24-hour period following the assassination of President Kennedy, a film strip was shown on one of the local TV stations. This strip was from station WDSU-TV in New Orleans and reflected the activities of Oswald and others in that city concerning the distribution of pamphlets for the Fair Play Cuba Committee in the summer of 1963. One of the individuals passing out pamphlets was recognized by Spears. This man was James Farlow McCurley, not Charles Steele Jr., but James Farlow McCurley. McCurley is a suspected homosexual. In connection with these homosexual activities, he uses the name Madear. McCurley was arrested by the Sheriff's Office and City Police Department, yada, yada, yada. So, this deputy in Baton Rouge recognized this person not as Charles Hall Steele Jr., but as James Farlow McCurley, and apparently there's no follow-up whatsoever. Perhaps the FBI already had their ID and decided not to pursue this one, but it seems a little reckless to me for investigators not to pursue leads. I can't find any photos of Steele, but Deputy Spears had mugshots of McCurley, and this is McCurley and his brother, another suspected homosexual. And so we have a photograph of McCurley to compare with the person in the film. And I think we have a match here. The hair looks a little longer in the film, where I get these stills from the film handing out the leaflets, than it does in the mugshot. But the nose looks exactly the same. And while we don't have precisely the same poses, it looks like the same guy. It's certainly a very close match, and Spears apparently had no question in his identification of him. So I think this is probably actually McCurley, James Farlow McCurley, handing out leaflets with Oswald. And the Steele stuff, I think, is so weird that I think this probably was arranged by the cover-up operation, that they wanted this person to be somebody else, and that they chose Charles Steele Jr. Presumably he looks something like that. I don't know, because there's no pictures of him available. But I think that is the best explanation for the evidence here. that it was McCurley, and they didn't want that known because that would probably open up a whole new can of worms. If Lee Harvey Oswald was known to have been hanging out with these suspected homosexuals, then there probably would be a whole lot of other people who would have to be questioned. And so it was probably simpler for them to take the politician's stupid son and use him as a stand-in for who this person is, because then you don't have to question anybody else. It's speculative, but that's my explanation.